and thanks for joining us for our very first Fathom Live. It's a live stream show created to give you tips and insights from leaders and experts in and around the real estate industry. I'm your host, Jeff Sturtz, and for our very first Fathom Live, we have a very special guest host today, our fearless founder and CEO, Josh Harley. Josh, thanks for coming on.
I'm excited to be here. This is gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think so. Now, Josh is going to be on future shows as well, perhaps?
I'm certainly going to try.
All right, so he'll be coming and going with that to bring his insights and expertise from the real estate industry. We have some great stuff lined up for you today, including an interview with an amazing real estate team leader and business person, Brannon. So he's waiting in the wings here, and we'll be talking to him in just a couple minutes here. But before that, I want to thank our sponsors today, On Target Transactions. You can work smarter rather than harder with On Target, as they handle everything from start to finish for your residential real estate transactions. So visit ontargettransactions.com to learn more. And as always with On Target, you don't pay unless it closes. So that's a pretty good deal. Again, that's ontargettransactions.com. Well, again, our guest is Brannon Potts. Brannon, again, thank you for coming on the show, and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Brannon runs a top producing team in the Fort Worth area. His team did $44 million in production last year, and he grew his team from just himself to 13 people over the last several years. He has 10 team members doing 244 units last year with 4 producing agents, averaging 61 per producing agent. So pretty incredible, and that's why we have you here, because we want you to talk about
awesome.
that. Just a note for our viewers, if you want to ask questions and you're on the Fathom Live page, you can do that. If you're on mobile, you can click the link there below the video, and it'll bring you to the YouTube version of this, and you'll be able to ask questions. We may not get to all of them, just because we got a lot to talk about, and they might be coming in at different times. But feel free to ask, and we'll try to keep our eye on those. So if you have questions for Josh or Brannon, feel free to ask that. So, well, let's jump right into things. Totally random question here to begin with. I understand that you competed as a world championship triathlon athlete as a member of Team USA. Tell me about that. How did that come about?
Yes, it was kind of interesting when I got into triathlon. As growing up, as probably many people did, they watched the Ironman triathlon championships and really enjoyed that, and thought I had maybe an opportunity to make Team USA's World Triathlon team. So we did that and was part of that team for 3 years, and just phenomenal experiences traveling the world, competing for Team USA.
Wow. So kind of question then related to that. How did that experience translate into what you do now in real estate?
Interesting. That it really did. I learned what excellence looks like and what it takes to be one of the best in anything. And it really taught me those disciplines, and tried to translate those same types of disciplines into real estate from those experiences. So I would say I actually did learn some things of what was possible. And I began to believe what was that same type of skills in real estate, what was possible and what it takes to be one of the best.
Great.
Well, that's fascinating. One of the things, I get an opportunity to meet with a lot of agents one-on-one, and one of the first questions I like to ask them, because it really helps me understand who they are, but that is, what got you into real estate in the first place?
Well, it was back in 2011, and my wife was a mortgage loan officer. I was in banking before, and in past experiences, we'd had interactions with real estate agents and just thought we could do it and actually improve some of the experiences we had. We wanted to give, honestly, it was part of the whys of why we got in, is giving them the experience we felt like we didn't get. And so it created a fairly strong why if we wanted to give them that experience and be able to be a part of something in people's lives. Those are big events in people's lives, and just uses it as an opportunity to pour into people's lives and be a great light in our industry.
And how long ago was that?
This will be our 8th full year in the business. So that would have been, and we
Wow.
got in 2011, but this will be our 8th full year in the business.
So 8 years in, and you've already got a very successful team. In fact, when you first came to Fathom, you already had a team in place. Why did you choose to bring your team to Fathom?
I'll tell you one key thing that we looked at was the compensation model was a very fair compensation model for teams. And in truth, from where we came, it gave everybody a reduction in that commission or transaction that was paid to the brokerage. But what we did was take much of those dollars, and we reinvested those savings back into lead generation. Was able to then, just say as an example, $20,000 from our team savings, we reinvested that into a lead gen model and multiplied that business, because we've grown since we started with Fathom. I think that year we finished up around 180 units of home sales, and this last year, which is the first full year with Fathom, 244.
That's fantastic. I love to hear that type of growth. And a lot of people watching, in fact, a lot of our agents in the company are thinking about building a team. One of the questions they have, though, is why would an agent want to build a team?
I think what it is for us, and what most people that want to do that, is really build leverage in their life and improve quality of life, and still have an upward potential of your income. And it just helps add that quality of life. And I think it builds things of character in your life, of learning how to lead people.
Absolutely.
It's lots of growth.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is important for people to understand as well is it gives you that opportunity for growth, but it also comes with a lot of liability and risk as well. So you really need to know what you're getting into before you do it. But the fact that you've done that very successfully, you've already been 8 years in, only 8 years in, and already doing 244 sales last year. I'm sure this year is going to be much stronger. We have a lot of higher producing agents who are thinking about starting a team. Some of them are at 20 closings per year, some of them at 60 closings per year. At what production level do you think they should be at before they really think about starting that team?
Now, this is somewhat personal opinion. Sure. I've heard some things in the industry. One of the things that I had heard is once you get either to 3 or 4 closings a month for 4 months in a row, that you're at the spot where it is time to build leverage in your life and to begin growing a team. Because most people know that much at that production and anything higher, that's a lot of hours that you're personally working, any which way you put that together.
Sure. So an agent who's doing about 20 homes per year, you'd suggest they wait a little bit longer to build that production up before they get started?
Yes, I would agree with that, Josh. I think it's in that 3 to 4 transactions. For one thing, I don't think you would have enough revenue to bring in, say, the first hire is that staff type of hire, either part-time or full-time. You're probably not going to have enough revenue to do that, and consistency of revenue.
For sure. No, I completely agree. That needs to be a little bit higher before they get started. I hear a lot of agents, when they think about building a team, they want to rush out there quickly and hire that first buyer's agent. But before they do that, really, who would you recommend be their first hire, and maybe their second hire as well?
Yeah, I think what I've learned to study this business, and I will tell people, and I'm telling you even from personal bad experience, one of the common mistakes of building a team is their first hire is a buyer's agent. And I did the same thing. I'm speaking from personal experience too, of making that probably the wrong decision. Is you should be a staff hire first. And that first hire is you're ideally looking for a long-term hire, as anybody would, is maybe your director of operations. And the way I describe it is you're not looking for an executive assistant. You're looking for the assistant executive for you. For one thing, there's kind of 2 things that it does. It manages the revenues coming in and your expenses, And it allows you, by doing that staff hire, it allows you to pour that revenue back into your business to continue to grow when it is time to get an agent. But also, most agents, we're all not that great, honestly. If we're good as being a salesperson, we're not good at the paperwork side. And a good assistant executive will be good at helping you on the paperwork side and also documenting best practices. That would be part of their responsibilities, is really document what's working and your best practices. And before you hire an agent, to allow them to have documented best practices as you begin to train your first agent. First two hires typically are a staff hire.
Very good. So I would absolutely agree. For me, when I'm coaching an agent who's thinking about building a team or has started a small team, is really the first two hires should be people who can help you increase your production. So let's say you're an agent at 20 closings per year and you want to start thinking about building a team. Well, the first person you should really think about bringing in is that transaction coordinator. We talked about On Target earlier, a fantastic company, but that first person being that transaction coordinator that can really help you to be able to reduce the amount of time you spend on the paperwork and really focus on what you do best, and that's sales. That's generating more closings, more business, and really being able to establish that business. A lot of times I try to recommend, another one of those early hires to be like a virtual assistant, someone who can really help you with the marketing side of your business, the listing coordination, getting all your flyers together, allowing you to spend more time on the sales side and less time on actually the busy work. In other words, working on your business and not in your business. By doing that, it allows you to build your business to a level that now justifies you bringing that buyer's agent. You now have enough business to be able to feed that first buyer's agent. Absolutely.
Yes.
So, go ahead.
I'd heard before is, and it was a good principle I teach to other agents is, give two examples. Say you want to make $100,000 of income or net to you, is thinking using the average of 2,000 hours. Well, then that's $50 an hour work. Well, then you need to focus what truly is that $50 an hour work. Paperwork typically is 40% of our work if we're by ourselves. Is that truly $50 hour work, or is sales where the $50 an hour work is? Same thing as you move up to 200,000. Well, then that's $100 an hour work. Am I truly focusing on that quality of work? What does that look like?
Absolutely. So I see a lot of teams with team members who average 5 or 6 closings per year. One of the problems I see in those scenarios, you tend to experience a lot of that revolving door effect. What would you ideally see the average team member, the average producing agent on your team, do in production per year or even per month?
It truly has grown over the years, but I think initially, an initial agent, we started, let me just tell you what we started out at. We started out at 24 closings a year as our standard. We have raised that standard now to 38 per agent is the minimum standard. So that's kind of where we're at. But as last year, all 4 of our producing in production agents, they averaged 61. So we're raising our standard, but I would say a minimum 24, maybe 30. And so you've got to have enough business that generates that kind of revenue for that agent that's going to be working with you. And that's how you keep them also. If you can't feed them, they're not going to stick with you.
Yeah, I think you brought up a very key point, and that's the idea of being able to feed your agents. And part of the why there's that revolving door is because the agents aren't making enough money, and when they're also paying the splits to the team, they realize very quickly that they just can't pay the bills, and they're looking for another opportunity, whether that be another team or back on their own. And unfortunately, we see a lot of team members who decide to go out on their own and then end up not making it all and just get out of the business altogether. So I agree with you absolutely that we really need to stress that a team focuses on bringing team members in who are going to be able to produce high. I think one of the mistakes a lot of teams make, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that they try to bring in a lot of agents instead of having one agent who closes a lot of business. And then once you get that one agent ramped up, you bring another agent in and ramp them up to close a lot of business. And then a third, right? It's quality over quantity. Or reverse,
yes.
It's quantity for the agent, but it's quality of the agent. It's when you say quality, it's not just the quality of who the agent is, but it's also the quality of life for that agent, the agent's ability to pay their bills and take care of their families, right? You're striving not only to build your business, but also to build that business of the people who rely on you. What are your thoughts on that?
I would really agree, because I've learned these things from past mistakes. So I'm not saying I got this right the first time, and I'm still growing and learning, but I take each hire very seriously. That basically I'm committing to the family. I'm committing to that family, that I'm making an agreement that I can help feed them, but it's a value proposition from both parties. I'm agreeing that I can feed them. Our goal is to provide them at least 70% of their business comes from the team. The other 30% is we're teaching them how to lead generate a supplement to the business. But then their responsibility is, with the opportunities we're giving that agent, they have to close at a certain percentage of a high standard. So it's both of us have obligations, but I take that hire very seriously. So I would say I've grown slower than some teams, but I've gotten better quality agents. I want to hire right the first time as best I can.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we had a question come in here, actually a couple different questions. The one actually, really great question. He asks, or he or she asks, is a team there, with Fathom being 100%, what does a team split look like? How does that benefit a buyer's agent? I'm just not sure how a team structure looks like. First of all, I would encourage you to go to fathomcareers.com. On the homepage, there's a link to that team structure and examples of what that looks like. But also, I'll let you know, we have a giveaway for you. In the show notes below, you have a document that Brannon helped put together that actually shows how he structures his team. So you can take a look at that and download that. But yeah, so check out Fathom Careers as far as that team structure goes. But one question from Mike, he says, do you recommend the assistant, and perhaps at first what you call assistant executive, to be licensed, or would that be just somebody else to kind of help you with details that wouldn't necessarily have to be?
We initially did them, hired them. Most everybody we've hired has been non-licensed, but we have asked them to work on their license after they've been here for a time. I think it makes them more valuable as far as knowledge, but it plays into them. If they want to be in this business long term, we want them to into them the training and the knowledge. So we eventually, after about 6 months, we ask them to work on their license, and we participate in helping them pay to get the license. That's just what we do, because that's part of pouring our training into them.
So I noticed that a lot of teams will have their team members handle everything cradle to grave. With your team, do you have each of your members handle the full sales cycle, or do you split that between different members in your team?
We split it. If you just think of a pie of 100%, basically the agents are handling a portion of the sales cycle. So we have ISAs that nurture leads, which we now have called them business development. We changed the label to BDAs. They're doing the front-end business development. That nurturing of leads, to then they hand the client off to them once they're pre-approved, say on the buyer side, pre-approved and ready to go look at homes. They handle from showings to writing the contracts to maybe negotiating the repairs. But once it's in contract, the staff work with the client also from contract to close. So they are doing, say it's 40% of the sales cycle, and the rest is being spread between the team, and they can actually handle more clients. Like they all average 61. They could handle more clients. It's really about net, and this is the conversations I have with agents. It's more about what's in your pocket. Forget the split. And I would ask them, would you rather have 100% of a grape or 10% of a watermelon? How big is your universe? And here's our universe. And of course, that's just the best illustration I could come with. Their opportunity, they're making right now, if I look at the area's average commission of an agent, they're making 3 to sometimes almost 4 times the average agent's commission. Even though their split is different, they're making more than 4 times more than the average agent.
I actually want to go back to the split. So one of the the comments was about what that team split looks like. And one of the things I see a lot of teams do, and I'm not going to say it's a mistake. I do believe there's a lot of ways to skin a cat. There's a lot of ways to build and structure a team. But only the teams that I've seen that have had the greatest success and survivability are the ones that had certain types of splits with their agents. And that's splits that are like a 50-50 split, for example. A lot of team leaders come into this feeling like that's being greedy or it's not taking care of their agents. And one of the things that I try to argue and help them understand is that while your agent is keeping 50%, from your 50%, you're paying for all the leads, the office space, you're paying for all the branding, all the marketing, and you're having to pay your own bills out of that, right? You have to feed your family too. So the argument's not about it being 50-50 and whether that's fair or not. It really comes down to what is the fair value proposition? What's that fair value exchange that you're experiencing? So in other words, if you've got someone on a 50-50 split and yet they're only doing 30% or 40% of the work, then that's a very fair value exchange, right? A very fair value proposition.
Absolutely.
So what are your thoughts on those splits? And do you mind sharing? And you don't have to, but you mind sharing what your buyer's agents are?
Sure. It's very open. What we've done is, because we have BDAs, we changed from a business model of 50-50 down to a 40-60 split. Now, we do add just a tiny bit, and I'm sure we can address this. If they bring their own lead, it goes to 50-50 because that 10%, they nurtured them. BDAs did not. But we're handling, the value is we're bringing the training, the leads. I mean, what's everybody dying for is leads. And our leads are served up ready, pre-approved with their pre-approval mortgage letter and ready to go look at homes or a listing opportunity. Those are hard to come by, and those take lots of time to nurture that person to be ready at that end point. So you're right. That's kind of what we do, is a 40-60 split or 50-50 if it's theirs, but they have staff, places to work from, and the training that we give, and those people nurturing the leads. As we look at the average, they're making 4 times the average of a typical agent here. I think it's a very fair proposition. And from the back end, we're not making 40% as an organization.
No, you're not,
because there's lots of expenses to create this to happen.
So
to make this happen.
To your point, which I think is a very valuable point, a lot of people need to understand, is that your agents, while they're making 40% of the commission, they're closing 61 transactions, right? So what's more money? 100% of 6 transactions or 40% of 60 transactions? And I would argue math, I guess what's the word? Math doesn't lie, but liars do math. So it's your agents are doing very, very well. In fact, they're making more than most of the agents in our company, or a lot of the agents in our company. So it's really shows the value and the power of a team when the team is structured properly, right? So I think one of the points you made too, which I really appreciate, is the fact that when you first are interviewing and hiring a team member, you're not talking about the splits right away, right? You're initially talking about what their job is going to be, and then what you're hoping to pay them, right? It's my goal to get you to make $100,000 per year. How does that sound to you, right? At the end of the day, what does $100,000 mean? Well, that's a 40% of the commission. If they're making $25,000 per year, does the split really matter when now they're making $100,000 per year, and you're the one that's feeding them and building them up and supporting them? So the team structure, I think you make a very valid point. And one point that a lot of team members sometimes don't quite understand is that it's not about the 40% or 50% or 60%. It's about what you actually net at the end of the day and what the team helped you to be able to achieve.
Yes.
So one of the things
what we've done to go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish that, because I was going to move on to something else.
Because we've thought through that. It kind of goes with this conversation is, I don't want to create a ceiling. So what we are growing right now is allowing people on our team to grow a team inside of our team and teaching them leverage as they are some of the leaders in the organization, and allowing them to have team members underneath them that they've mentored and taught how to do it, and let them grow a team inside of our team where there's no ceiling and cap to their income. that they can continue to use the same principles I've learned is through leverage with people and growing opportunities inside of their little team, inside of our team. So we're in the early stages, but it's starting to take hold and it's starting to work.
One of the things you mentioned was a BDA. I assume it's very similar to what most people are thinking of an ISA, but with a little bit of deviation. Can you tell us what that is?
For us, it's in the industry and not just real estate. What's been happening, we term them ISAs, which is our language here in real estate, but the business development associate or agent, however you want to term it, is a better description. They're in charge of the long-term business development. They're the front end of developing these opportunities through internet type of opportunities, through just different. We do some outbound as their agents, outbound calling. The agents take the sign calls of that business development agents. They take those sign calls, so they're handling any type of lead like that.
Yeah, I think the ISA, that role is a very important role in your team, especially if you want to have a large team. And how do you compensate that ISA member, that BDA member?
What we typically do is we created it, but if you boil our business down, it's a sales organization. So we create, every position has a sales type of component to it, that if the team's doing well, they're doing well. If the team's not doing well, they're not doing as well, because it's all focused on sales. But theirs is part salary and then part bonuses. We did, and kind of dive into this, we did a bonus off of appointments and off of closings. So their goal, what they can control is appointments, helping set the appointments. They can't necessarily control the closings, but they get bonuses off of that. So it's a combination, and we added bonuses only off of pre-approved buyer appointments and listing appointments.
Very good.
To create the actions we want.
I'd like to talk about other team members in your organization. One of the questions, the comments, was about transaction coordinators. From my experience, before you go out and hire someone permanent on staff to handle transaction coordinating, you want to hire them outside, because obviously you can't feed a transaction coordinator by yourself until you really build that team up. But at this point, do you have that transaction coordinator in-house on staff?
Yes, we do. We have two. Now, we split it into two different roles. One's a listing side, and then one's a buyer side. So we have two right now.
That's outstanding. So to be able to generate as many closings you do for your agents, what have you found to be the best lead source?
I would say for us, we did, and I know it's very market specific, so I can understand that. Zillow for us in our area has not been performing like it used to. So we canceled Zillow about 1.5 years ago. Google AdWords that we use is still performing very well, and we have a very good ROI on that, on Google AdWords. We just recently have ventured into some outbound calling with expireds and for sale by owners. We want to test it, make sure it's profitable, and not get too far extended with expenses. So when we try a new lead, I guess I call it dip our toe in it, test it out, and then if it's performing, we incrementally add money to it and to make sure that it's profitable. But Google AdWords right now is still productive for us.
Knowing you, I assume you are very detailed on the numbers, and you take a look every single day at what the acquisition cost for your leads are. How detailed do you think it how important is it to be that detailed in investing and monitoring those numbers?
I mean, you can go too detailed, where you get into too small of details where you can't see you can't see the forest for the trees. But I think you need to be aware and calculating, for us, and this is just in our area, we've been doing it for years now, and we're averaging around, but it fluctuates between $8.50 to $9 a lead that we're getting them for. But I monitor that, and so I'm backing into, okay, then how many leads does it take to equate into an appointment? How many appointments does it take to equate to a closing? And I'm breaking those numbers down, and we've been doing it for so long. If something's not, even if an agent is not closing at the percentage we want, we've got to investigate what's going on. It could be the quality of the leads not as strong, or it could be the agent just doesn't have the skill set to close them. I mean, it could be multiple factors, but we track all of that from the moment we get them to closing. We're tracking everything.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of lead sources where the cost for generating the leads was higher, but the conversion ratio ultimately was lower, and therefore the acquisition cost was higher. I've seen some other lead sources where it's a 2% conversion ratio, which sounds horrible, but that 2% when it finally closes, the acquisition cost was much, much lower, which at the end of the day allows you to invest in even more lead generation. So of all the different lead sources you've looked at, whether it be Zillow, Realtor.com, pay-per-click, which you said Google AdWords, for example, what have you found to be the greatest return on your investment?
Man, I would say we're having a good return on investment on expireds right now. We've got a great agent we've been using Vulcan and getting the data from Vulcan. Google AdWords, right now we're almost right around 3% on paid conversion leads when the industry national average is less than 0.5%. But 3% on Google AdWords, and it's profitable because I back in the fixed costs per closing. And so I have formulas in those Excel spreadsheets that are real long that I've learned. But Google AdWords still is one of the strongest that we're getting. I mean, still to this day.
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those that requires the most education and the greatest amount of patience as well, because the conversion time is so much longer that sometimes people can get disheartened and quit before they really see that ultimate return on that investment. I know you got some other questions as well.
Yeah, well, Brandon, we're going to have you back again because there's just a lot of good stuff that we could talk about. I'd love to ask you more about lead generation and that kind of thing. But just some questions here in closing. Maybe you can share one book that has taught you a lot in real estate and why, just for our viewers, so they can go out and maybe educate themselves.
I think a couple of books, just reading on hiring people. There's ones on talent code and finding the right talent. There's lots of books on there on looking for talented people. If I could say one of the key components of growing a team is mastering the hiring. You hire somebody better than yourself, your team is going to succeed. But recent books that I'm reading right now, and this has actually been out for a while, is called Traction. And then another good one that the team has really enjoyed was called The Traveler's Gift. Those are two that we've gone through and we're reading right now.
All right, appreciate that. What do you do as a team leader then to stay sharp yourself? I mean, besides reading books, are there any other things that you do to sharpen your axe?
I guess I listen to a lot of podcasts that are out there, and going to a couple of conferences a year. I'm always looking to find some good conferences with good speakers. But podcasts, I mean, you've got the Team Building Podcast by Jeff Cohn is a good one. I actually really like the Real Trends one. Is more of a 30,000-foot view of what's going on in the industry. And then there's one called Real Geeks. I mean, there's just several podcasts out there that I constantly listen to just stay on the cutting edge of what's going on in the industry.
Very good. Now, this one's kind of an interesting question. What is one failure that you've experienced, particularly in building a team, since we're talking about that you would tell your previous self, hey, don't do this, or maybe do something a different way?
Hiring an agent first and the wrong commission structure. That take back did not go well, and of course we lost them. But hiring an agent at the very beginning instead of staff, and we did an 80% commission structure to them. And when we realized we were losing money on every closing, I got sick at my stomach because I knew we had to make a change, and that is not a good conversation.
Yeah, I'm actually really glad you brought that up. A few months ago, we had two very successful teams. I think one did 36 million in production. I can't remember what the other one did, but they both structured their team in such a way that they were on a 70-30 split and a 90-10 for the personal business. And both of them, after about 3 years, realized that they made more income as a personal producing agent than they did with the team. And yet the team required a lot of liability, financial obligation, a lot of stress, a lot of drama. It comes with running a team as well. So the wrong commission split really can destroy the team. And of course, like you said, there's no takebacks. Right? As soon as you say to the team member, you're going to go from a 70-30 to 50-50, they're going to say, see you later. So you really you really do need a structure right from the start. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
All right. Well, again, we have that that PDF that you can look at from Brannon down there. But before we let you go, maybe Brannon, what would be, let's say, 2 different things that you would say if I say I'm ready to build a team, I'm at that 20 transactions production level, and I'm ready to jump into this. Maybe give me 2 closing pieces of advice here before I jump into that.
I would say at that production level, wait. You want to get into the 3+. But once you're into the 3+ closings a month, I would say save back some of that money so that you've got reserves during the leaner months to keep that person on staff. And I call it store up for the winter. You've got to store up for the winter. For that first hire is always the hardest one to store up for that winter time, to keep them on staff so that usually it's the winter time, so that when the spring, if you've done that, you can launch that much faster to capture those opportunities because they're doing your paperwork and going through. That would be a big one.
That's excellent.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And again, thank you so much for joining us. We definitely will have to have you back on here at some point. Thank you for your time. Before we let you go, though, here, folks, we want to remind you that Fathom Realty offers 100% commission and the tools designed for your success, including things like KV Core, a paperless back-end transaction management system, truly affordable healthcare, all kinds of stuff.
Agent equity.
Great guy here. You get all kinds of things. So make sure you check us out, and if you're a Fathom agent watching too, tell a friend. But for next week, we have another guest coming on. He is a top producer in California, and he's going to be talking about how anybody can become a top producing listing agent. So that's Stephen Powell. He's going to be joining us next week. So I hope you tune in for that. Again, on every Wednesday now at 1:30 p.m. Central Time. So again, Brannon, thank you again, and thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Brannon.